Hello, everyone. I am Cody.
And I'm Brent.
And we are the Hugo Knots.
And we are rolling out the red carpet here at Worldcon 2022 for interviews with authors and content creators.
All right. We are here at Worldcon 2022 with Lorelei, Gideon, and Janice of the Galactic Journey fanzine and authors of many books as well. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. It was just a short jaunt from 1967.
Yes. The first question I have to ask you is how? You want to hold
I'm
that
glad
up?
you asked me that question. So the answer is, I am a time traveler. So I go through time just like you, one day at a time, but I do it 55 years time shifted from you. So for me, it is currently September 2nd, 1967. LBJ is our president. We're in a Vietnam War. The Beatles just released All You Need Is Love on a worldwide broadcast, which was really quite astonishing. And science fiction is huge. There's a show called Star Trek you may have heard of. And we cover that every day at galacticjourney.org, which you can access through your pocket multivax.
It is truly incredible how frequently you all release content and how immersive and detailed it is. The history and the creative language, the vocabulary, it's all really incredible. How do you output that much?
It helps that we have more than 20 people on our team now, although there was a time when it was just me and Janice would occasionally edit. But yeah, there's a lot of us now. We cover the whole world. We have staff in West Germany, the United Kingdom, Australia. I'm recruiting for Japan. So anyone out there, if you're a Japanese fan who's really into stuff from the 60s, we need you.
The 60s for a few more years, right? You're
Right.
at 67, right?
67. So in a few years, yeah, we will be in the futuristic 70s.
Make the swap. So, we're asking, we put out the red carpet. We're asking some red carpet questions. I'll ask each of you, who would be the science fiction author you'd most like to go to dinner with, to chat with?
Don't put me on the spot right away.
I'd say, Larry Niven, because he's a great up-and-comer, but on the other hand, I just had dinner with him in May. So I would love to go to dinner with Zena Henderson. I love her The People stories, and she's such a huge impact on science fiction, and I hope she's remembered in 55 years because her stuff is just beautiful and sublime, and she came in right with the first big wave of women in the Silver Age, and she's just such an amazing, compelling author. And the other person would be Cordwainer Smith, but unfortunately he passed away not just a few months ago.
When I was, there was a time in my life when I would have said Isaac Asimov. His Susan Calvin stories. His Susan Calvin stories had a huge impact on me when I was younger, and they were part of his iRobot fix-up was one of the first books that inspired my love of science fiction. Having heard stories about how he treats female convention goers has made me less inclined to want to meet him in person. So I think I would have to say either Rosal George Brown. Unfortunately, in 1967, she has leukemia and is not expected to live. But she wrote Sybil Sue Blue, which is a pretty interesting story of a. It's sort of half urban mystery, half space romp, and it's pretty great, and it has a very interesting woman protagonist who's a mother like I am, and who is a detective, and she's really cool and really great. So either her or the other one I would like to meet would be Pauline Ashwell, who has a story in our Rediscovery book. And she wrote a very funny story called
Unwillingly to School.
Unwillingly to School, which I helped introduce. And it was such a funny story and written in such an interesting way. And I'd love to talk to her about what gave her the idea and what she was thinking when she wrote it, because it's just a joy. Oh, and maybe actually one other one. Sorry, I have to say one more.
Take your time.
In Rediscovery 2, there's another story that I introduced that I absolutely love, and we don't know anything about the author. Her name is April Smith, and that's all we really know. And it's a beautiful story. I absolutely loved it. It touched me so deeply. And so I'd also love to talk to her and find out who she was, because there's so little that we know about some of these women. So those are, sorry to say so many, but those are the women or the science fiction authors I'd love to meet in person.
Lorelai?
I finally thought of one. I would love to meet over dinner with Madeleine L'Engle. A Wrinkle in Time was very formative. Dad read it to me just a couple years ago as a bedtime story, and the imagery was just so evocative and profound, and so I would love to hear some of the inspirations for her.
That's a great pick. I feel like L'Engle is such a good gateway for a lot of us as children to then kind of explore science fiction from there. I'm interested in, can you tell me about the Rediscovery series?
Sure. So at Galactic Journey, what we do is we read science fiction and we review it. That's one of the main things we do. There's tons of things that we do, Paula.
So much science fiction, by the way. Unbelievable amount of science fiction.
Well, there's so many jewels back then that people have forgotten about today because the winds of time, and also some people tend to get overlooked in favor of other people. And one of the groups of people that we found were overlooked were women. And it's a lot of people, if you ask, hey, which women were big in the classic age? They'll know Anne McCaffrey, they'll know Ursula K. Le Guin. They might know Andre Norton, they might know Lee Brackett, and then they'll struggle and say James Tripchey Jr., Octavia Butler. But there were 36 women regularly publishing science fiction when Ursula K. Le Guin came on the scene in 1962. And they were writing amazing stuff. I like to say that women got 10% of what was published, but 25% of what was worth reading. And so I decided to found a press, Journey Press, journeypress.com. And the first thing we came out with was a collection of our favorite stories by women. And anybody can do an anthology, so we wanted to add some value. So there are introductions for each story that give a context to the people, and each one is by a different modern author or creator. So we have some really interesting people, like in this series, Dr. Lisa Yazek, Kat Rambo, Marie Vibert. But we also have people you've never heard of but are still creating cool stuff. There's a woman who sold a Marquis de Sade TV show. So modern creators introducing past stars. That's the Rediscovery series. Early this year for Women's History Month, we came out with the second volume, which ironically goes backwards in time, because the mid-50s were really the heyday for women in science fiction in the Silver Age. Amazing stories, and we got the rights to all the stories we wanted to print.
That's amazing. That's a very noble project, noble goal, and awesome to get stuff from that era that people haven't seen back into print, especially in that context. So I also wanted to ask a little bit about Galactic Journey itself, which is to say, I already said very prolific, but also the attention to detail, the amount of photos you find to put on each post, the historical context, and also the kind of often sardonic language that brings in that brings you into the space and the feel of the time. Why'd you think of starting the project, and what do you enjoy most about it?
So the project exists largely, it's her fault. In 1954, or for everyone else, 2009, I made a resolution to read the science fiction magazine collection my father had left me when he died many, many decades ago. And to stay honest, to make sure I read them all, I decided, okay, I'll read them month by month as they come out with a 55-year time shift. And that was it. It was just a fun thing to do and I did that for a few years. And as I read them, when you read all the magazines from the same time, they all refer to the same pop culture, they refer to each other, the same movies, the same government events. You start to get this feel for the universe that you don't get when you just read a history book. So I started listening to the music, I started watching the movies, I started reading the newspaper. And in 1958, October, Janice said, hey, you've been reading all these magazines. Do you want to recommend some of your favorite stories? Because I like science fiction. I said, sure. And I started making a list. I'm like, you know what? I should make a zine that everyone can read. And, 2 or 3 people will read this thing. It'd be great. And so I started. And because I'm a professional space historian, my field of expertise is the late 50s space program. So I knew all these people that I was talking about. They were just much older in your time. And so I started writing Galactic Journey, and it was every other day, and it was just 3 magazines and space shots. And it was just a small, fun thing I did for like a year and a half. And then Charlie Jane Anders, who's a big deal, obviously, blogged about us on IO9. And all of a sudden, we were getting thousands of people looking at us. And I'm like, I should probably have a domain name. So we left Dreamwidth and became galacticjourney.org. And then we started getting fans who would leave comments in character. They would be playing along, and it would just become this role play. And eventually, they would either ask to sign on, or I'd say, hey, would you like to do an article? And so we started getting more and more people covering lots of things. So, for instance, we have John Boston. John Boston was a big-name fan in the 50s. He's covering magazines in which his own letters appear. And he literally wrote the book on amazing science fiction. He covers it every month. We got Cora Bullard, who's been a Hugo finalist in her own right several times, covering West Germany. We had a Soviet correspondent for several years covering Russian science fiction. KD has the Order of Australia for doing space history in Australia. We just have so many amazing people doing really cool stuff. Lorelei started writing articles on the Twilight Zone. And now we're round-robining Star Trek. We have a whole bunch of people who've never seen Star Trek, of course, because it just came out.
Right.
We're watching it week by week as it comes out with original commercials, with Daniel Boone before it and Dragnet 67 afterwards. And so we have a whole crop of people who are Lorelei's age who are like, what is this show? And they watch it with us every night on a small TV with commercials, and then they write about it, this show that they've never seen before. And those are those articles where you have like 4 or 5 contributors. So we're really bringing the past to life in a way that's never been done before.
Yeah, nothing to contextualize history like watching a TV show with the ads on, right? Really bring you in.
It's true. When Kennedy was shot, we watched the broadcast, the 3 of us, that weekend. And it was a visceral feeling for us to try to put ourselves in the shoes of people who lived at the time and write about what that was like. And we've watched the world change and gotten a little bit of a taste of what it must have been like, how quickly things like music was changing, how quickly things like technology was changing, going from black and white TV shows like Twilight Zone to watching things in color like Star Trek. And you just don't have that visceral understanding of it unless you at least try to live through it. Obviously, we can't recreate the past 100%, but we do our best to grasp it in a way that, as you say, nobody else does it. History classes never give you this kind of contextual understanding of the time.
It's just all the canon. So we have galacticjourney.org and then journeypress.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Your own writing?
Lorelei should probably take
Lorelei?
like the last 10 minutes of this interview. But I will very quickly say that we publish lots of people. In fact, we just published Marie Vibert's second novel. Marie Vibert's a really big deal, much bigger than we are.
We don't have her novel with us to show off.
Because it just came out.
Yeah.
And we just, Janice is a writer. She writes under 2 different names. Under Janice L. Newman, this is the stuff that you can show your children, and this is the stuff that you read late at night, if it's under Laura Weir's name. This one won the Rainbow Award last year for Best High Fantasy Gay Romance. This was featured on John Scalzi's blog in December. It's a fantastic, 3 books, 3 stories, all romance, speculative fiction romance.
They're all genre romance. Each one is a different genre. The first is science fiction. The second is paranormal, and the third is modern fantasy. So each one has a different spin on it.
Very sweet.
And then I write YA space adventure. I got tired of dystopian and grimdark YA, so I write stuff that it's kind of like mid-20th century stuff for young adults, but updated for the 21st century. The protagonist is a queer woman of color. In fact, not to give anything away, but really everybody is kind of queer in my books. So Keetra was the first one. This one did well enough to get me a full membership in the SFWA. And then this is Sirena, the sequel. And what's really cool, and this is a good segue into Lorelei. So these are great if your kids want like actual science in their books, but also just found family fun adventure. But Lorelei, she's a bigger deal than us. So this is our 4th time on the Hugo ballot for Galactic Journey. This is her 2nd time on the ballot, but the 1st time in her own right. She is the youngest Hugo nominee in the history of the award for Best Fan Artist. This is obviously not fan art, this is professional art, but this is an example of the kind of stuff she does. Our books are illustrated because they used to be and we want them to be again. But you can tell she's pretty good.
Yeah.
And honestly,
And-
Lorelei should take the rest of this interview.
And you have the style. I can feel the history in the style as well.
Yeah, definitely taken a lot of inspiration from like Kelly Frias and a lot of the old magazine illustrators, especially since I grew up sort of on comics too. So I have a very heavy like black and white ink style that's you can see in the old magazines too.
Yeah, that is really exciting. I bet you're excited.
I could not believe it when I came downstairs, checked my email, and it was like, congratulations, Hugo finalist, best fan artist. And I just sort of stood up and I was like, they got the wrong person. But no, it's absolutely incredible. I've been putting my art online for a couple years now. I do Inktober every year, which is a challenge where you put up an inked drawing every single day of October based on a one-word prompt. So I've done that for like 5 years now. And among other things, of course. And so I think that just built this community and this traction of people who really liked my art, and it's just been an amazing experience, a huge honor, and it really motivates me to just keep working and get as good as I can for people.
And where can people find you and your art?
Well, I happen to have a card right here that's not my room key. There we go. So I love the back, so I'm going to show that off first. But Lorelei Esther. I'm Lorelei Esther on Twitter and Lorelei.Esther on Instagram. So you can find my art there. And then, and then I'm often at conventions too. So if anytime you see me on the program, I'm on many panels at Worldcon and everything. So feel free to stop by and say hi. I'm always ready to talk about science fiction or art or the Journey Project.
She's also
Awesome.
a singer.
Oh, so among the many things that I do, I also love to do songwriting. I was lucky they offered me a concert slot at Worldcon here. I'm very excited about.
Oh, sweet.
Unfortunately, I have a disability in my hands where my hand muscles are very atrophied. So guitar is very difficult for me to play. So it's always a special occasion when I get to come out and perform a couple of my songs because it doesn't happen very often. So
That's awesome. When are you on?
3 p.m. tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, in the Plaza AB, I believe it is.
So you're getting stoked for that too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
All right, I have one last question. Mm-hmm. What was your favorite vote to cast this year for the Hugo? Out of any, why can't I think of the word right now? Category. Thank you.
Oh, geez. Well, as I was saying when I was going through the art show, it was a real hard thing when all of the people for Best Fan Artist this year are phenomenal people. There's a geek calligrapher and the woman who designs some of the Hugo Trophy bases, and just I'm like, I just love everyone. I want them all to win. As Dad always will say, Best Fanzine is spelled GALAC. So we've been nominated 4 times for that one, and we're really rooting. Someday we hope to win. But
hopefully it's someday 2 days from now.
Oh man,
in 1967.
We've checked the ballot every year. Not in the 1965, 1966, 1967 ballot have we showed up for Best Fanzine. I don't know what they're doing over there, but the bureaucracy.
Maybe the retro fanzine.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful having you and hearing a little bit more about what you all do.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.